Hello and welcome to another edition of Conversation with Simone on another aspect of philosophy. So far we have covered Socrates, his ideas and his disciple Plato. Today we will be discussing another person probably who is very important from philosophical perspectives and who is known as the philosopher. So, yeah, he is Aristotle. I will be discussing both of us about different aspects of Aristotle as of common interest to us. As a disclaimer, we are not philosophers. However, we have some interest in studying philosophy and its relevance in today's society. So let's get going. Aristotle, as you might have heard, was born in 384 BC. He was born in a place called Macedonia. In fact, his father was working as a physician to the king of Macedonia. So that's quite a very responsible post, and he had a lot of influence from that point of view. And he is the one who studied in academy of Plato.
For 20 years.
29 years, in fact, they say, quite for some time, until Plato died. So he was so-called the life of the academy. At a certain point of the time, Plato thought he was the crown prince or the life of whole intellectual tradition.
When Aristotle wasn't present, people would say that the mind isn't here.
All right, yeah, that's really great. And you know what? There are a bit of, you can tell, a bit of politics happened when Aristotle died. When Plato died, Aristotle was chosen as a director of academy, where he was one of the very most prominent student. The reason, there are many. Some people believe that it was because of his differences with Aristotle. Plato was more of an idealist. However, Aristotle was more like an empiricist. He is a person who was the so-called, he believed in reality. For Plato, idealism was the ultimate truth. However, Aristotle as a rationalist, as a realist, he believed that the only reality was the physical world which we inhabit.
And a quick tip on this.
Yep.
Well, you have a very famous painting of the Platonic Academy, and it depicts most of the famous scholars at the time, Xenophon, Plato, Socrates, and it also had Aristotle there, which I don't think was actually accurate at the time, because Aristotle kind of would have come into the picture a bit later. But you basically have this comparison between Socrates and Aristotle, where Socrates is pointing upwards to show his philosophy about the world and humans as a whole, while you have Aristotle pointing downwards to show his focus on humanity and the way human ethics works.
Okay, yeah, we'll certainly be discussing a little bit about that later on. I'm just trying to focus a little bit of biographical information on Aristotle. So, after the academy, after spending all the time, when he when Plato had and after his demise, one of Plato's relatives was made as the director of the academy. Aristotle wasn't very much pleased with that. In fact, he left that time, the academy, and then went back to Athens to Macedonia. Athens was where the academy was placed, located. So in Macedonia, As you know, he had great connections, and that time the king of Macedonia, his name is Nika Marcus, his son, famous son, most of you might be remembering or would be knowing, his name was Alexander, Alexander the Great, if you can say that. He was looking for a teacher, and he thought, although he had all the temperament of his king, he was courageous, Alexander, but he needed a bit of a balance, knowledge about the worldly views, particularly to learn about temperance. So they could not get any better teacher than Plato.
Aristotle.
As Aristotle. I'm so sorry about that. I'm going back to Plato again and again. So when Aristotle was allotted as a teacher of Alexander, he had some difficulty initially. Alexander, being the son of a king, had his own ways of dealing with things. He didn't actually comply many a time. So Aristotle had to moderate what he was going to say in a particular way. Through stories, through examples, he used to teach him different philosophical lessons. And he also had the privilege, being the king's son, to have one-to-one lesson with with uh, with Aristotle, Alexander Aristotle. So that was the reason. In fact, one time it is said that Aristotle imparted this concept of warrior hero. He thought how the warriors must be the real heroes. He mentioned that how Alexander should treat subjects. He had great reverence for Greek culture. So he believed everybody must be treated, the Greeks should be treated with reverence. However, the barbarians, those who are not Greeks, they should be treated more like beasts or plants. So you can say that Aristotle had a bit of sort of ethnocentric views about different races. So uh, Aristotle, I mean, he differed from Plato's academy, and he opened his own school called Lyceum, where he, unlike Plato, Aristotle gave importance more often practical aspects of knowledge. There is a typical type of teaching he used to impact called as peripatetic teaching, means like the wandering teachers. A teacher will not be fixed in a place, like visiting professors, you can say. They go from one place to another place, and they keep on imparting teaching. So those were the basis of how Aristotle differed from his prestigious guru or teacher, Plato, and he had his own school of thought. What happened after Alexander sort of he went about conquering the whole world, and when he finished his conquering and he ultimately died at a very young age.
Alcohol poisoning.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, we do not know the cause. Uh, it so happened that there were troubles. Like people didn't. Um, uh, Aristotle was viewed as one of the persons who was conspirator of the state. So something interesting happened there. Instead of standing for his truth, like his great teacher Socrates did, and died in the process, Aristotle decided to flee. He went back to Macedonia, I think, and somewhere after a couple of years of it, he died because of natural causes. So this great man had a tradition. He talked about almost all aspects of knowledge. So those are the basic sort of introduction as well as a little bit of biography about Aristotle. So anything else, Simone? You think you have any particular aspects of Aristotle you thought you can discuss it to some
All right.
to an extent?
So, a quick correction. Alexander the Great, his father was Philip of Macedonia.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think one of the most important parts of Aristotle's philosophy that Socrates didn't really address was rhetoric as a whole,
Mhm.
because throughout it, both Socrates and Plato had issues with rhetoric, because at the end of the day, Socrates was eventually executed, but not because the quality of his ideas weren't good, but more of he chose not to defend himself with said rhetoric. And one of the things that um, Aristotle thought was important when it came to teaching the Lyceum was teaching what rhetoric was. And it's basically giving a tool to intelligent people with good points who might not have the ability to convey their points in a way that sticks. So it's pretty much persuasion, or what you learn in debate class, for example.
Mhm.
And you have around three aspects to this. You have your emotional side of the argument, where you look at your opponent and say, is their pride on the line, or do they have some sort of personal attachment to their side of the argument? And you have something more like humor, because Aristotle noted that in the Agora, everyone was really had a sort of short span of attention, and it was important to capture um, hold their attention by humor per se, and of course staying animated with your hands and stuff to
Mhm.
emphasize each one of your points.
Yeah.
Some rhetoric.
Yeah. That's about that. I mean, see, he had rather this fundamental belief that it is the evidence that matters, not necessarily an ideal. He thought that as long as the evidence is there, you are able to justify the truth. For example, if the evidence has changed, then the truth might be changing. The conclusion might be different. That was the great principle which was the basis of modern scientific development. You can see we are so much evidence driven nowadays, isn't it? So that was it. So there is a fundamental point here I would like to make. Aristotle talked about multiple sciences from physics, astronomy, biology. He did almost seminal work. Some of his theories are still very valid. However, a lot are not. In fact, people say that only 20% of his writings probably has survived the scrutiny of the day. But the point here is that his method was more like observation of the facts that are available and his reflections on the facts or the evidence that he is able to see. So, as we are progressing and we have got more evidence, we certainly have got different results. What is talks on marine biology, for example, uh, on certain astronomical bodies, were quite fundamental to further development of the science as a whole. He's interestingly, I think it was Cicero who told about Aristotle that he compared Plato versus Aristotle. He said that if Plato's prose were silver, Aristotle was a flowing river of gold. Imagine how much relevant he was to his times. So basically, although we might tell that things are not as true now, I mean Aristotelian theories, but the way it was told that made sense to prevalent population, Greek populations during those time. And I'm sure, I mean, for a long time, until probably last couple of hundreds of years, that was still predominant. So some of those theories are probably, people might laugh today. For example, Aristotle believed that Earth was the center of the universe, all the celestial bodies. sun, moon, different stars, they rotate around world. Well, one can say that that came as a commonsensical explanation of the observations he made. So that was true with whatever evidence they could collect. So he was a person who used philosophical or scientific methods at arriving certain conclusions. Do you tend to agree with that, Simone?
I mean, the thing is, like, yeah, the way he does stuff, it has procedure, and um, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's right per se, because a lot of his ideas, especially as one's a woman, are really misogynistic, because they were kind of mired with the common views and what women were supposed to do. Like, he believed that they were intellectually
Inferior, no?
inferior to men, and he did say all of his ideas with such confidence that people pretty much just took it with a grain of salt, again applying his rules of rhetoric. And I think one of the worst things that Aristotle's done is kind of his um, the way he disagreed with atomic theory, because you had this philosopher named Democritus who came
Mhm.
like quite a bit before the Socratic philosophers, and he basically established the idea that matter can be cut up into little pieces, and eventually you'll reach a point where you can't cut it up anymore, atomos.
Mhm.
And Aristotle, he was like, but matter changes over time, it grows and decays, so how can this atomos thing actually be solid as a concept if all matter changes? And you can see where he's coming from. It's just like not really the case. And again, he says his stuff with so much conviction that eventually it just kind of sticks and becomes the norm.
Yeah, I mean, see, so the fundamental to Aristotelian thinking is that knowledge preceded from the experience of the senses. So we believe that everything, that all knowledge that we gain are from our senses. So if we cannot experience particular thing, you don't know about it. That was probably his fundamental sort of belief. But certainly, I mean, it had its limitations. As we discussed about women, I remembered, I mean, one of the when I read somewhere that he believed that a cold maternal blood produced girls, whereas the hot paternal blood produced boys, semen, and all the things might be challenged today, and people might find it a bit more hilarious. But still, there are theories, there are the basis, the way he arrived at his points were something that was worth admiring. Okay? Any other particular views or particular um, thoughts on Aristotle that you think that might be relevant today, Simone?
I mean, if anything, it kind of shows that if anyone has solid procedure, it doesn't always equal good results.
Mhm.
And really, you should kind of evaluate the stuff that you find, especially information that's presented to you. You have to reevaluate whether all the confidence around it is just like show dressing, or whether it's actually um, uh, solid under pressure.
All right. Yeah. So that's the thing. So we're coming towards the end of our discussion today. We learned a little bit about Aristotle, how his ideas mainly differed from that of his teacher or some say colleague Plato, and how he influenced Western civilization, particularly Western science, until recently. I mean, he still is credited as the father of multiple scientific disciplines. So uh, that's one of those fundamental figures in philosophy, and probably he is going to continue to be remembered as one of those seminal figures in science and philosophy for a long time to come. So thank you once again for watching us, and next time we'll be coming up with another philosopher next week, and we'll be discussing about it. Your comments Your criticisms and your questions are all welcome. Uh, in the podcast, you can ask questions, and we'll be happy to answer it in our next podcast. So, before concluding, anything else, Simone, from your side? So, thank you so much for watching.